Hey, James.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to give you a choice what we're going to talk about first, because we're going to talk about both of these things I'm going to bring up at some point. But I'll give you the choice where we start.
Are we
So,
going
what
to
do you want?
start about my visit to the
Well, yeah, it's
EB
good to hear.
Games
Yeah,
that
well,
was
yeah, well, yeah, that's
disguised
great.
as a
Yeah.
GameStop?
Huh?
I
Say
said,
it again.
were we going to be talking about my visit today to the EB Games that was disguised as a GameStop?
Oh, you went there? Which one?
The one at South Common still kicking butt. Today is Friday, August 27th, so No More Heroes 3 launched for the Nintendo Switch. So our favorite otaku, Travis Touchdown, is back in action, and I thought I'd get that for the Switch just to give it a roll. I loved the other two games and then the spin off.
So, update me. It's now the brand name has changed.
Well, I can tell you that EB Games is still up top on the store
Signage.
itself and probably for most stores. So they're still probably going to be in the process of taking those down, putting GameStop up. But by now, if you go to the website, it now says GameStop. So it's GameStop.ca. And all the receipts, so the receipt I got didn't say EB Games or whatever, it said GameStop Power to the Players at the top.
Hmm. Cute. Well, dawn of a new, brave new era, as they say. Oh, by the way, welcome back.
Yeah,
Been a
no,
couple
I
weeks.
hear it's been a while, right?
Yeah. Well, it's rare that you take two recordings off. I know there is some family business to tend to, and all good family business.
Mm-hmm.
So no issue there. It's just, as I said, it's just unusual that you take two recordings in a row away, whether it's a space heater like we're doing now or a regular episode. So
As they
welcome
say,
back.
life is a busy beast, right?
No kidding. Well, you would think August would be kind of a dog days type thing, but that would be typical times, but as noted, we're not in typical times. So work's been busy for you. I know that. You want me to tell you quickly about my work or lack thereof now?
Well, I know you've been looking for opportunities, as they say, like many others, so hopefully it works itself out. But at least the last job, as you said, left you feeling good, which is always good.
Yeah, but that ended last Saturday. So and I'm trying to remember when we taped again. Well, it's been 2 weeks since episode 49 as well. So yes, as noted, my contract with the city of Toronto ended with the Toronto Public Health Mass Clinic operation near 6 Points here. And I'll tell you this much about the final day there, James. It didn't feel like anyone was upset or anything. It felt more like the last day of school. That was the feeling going through. So there was some understanding that, all things end. Not really sad, just sad that, people that became friends won't be able to regularly meet up in that form anymore. But it
Hmm.
was like you go through the day, and once again, it was very slow at the clinic. And you understood why the majority of people's contracts that day and was running out, and why almost everybody working there with me would be were on their last day as well.
Yeah,
Everybody there understood.
yeah, they were shifting to a more localized strategy to get the last holdouts or the last people that have a hard time getting to certain clinics or to family doctors or whatnot. So,
Yeah, it's one of those just yeah, I guess this is a quasi COVID update here for the Ontario region, or specifically the Toronto region. The thinking with doing this was yes, closing the clinics or most of the mass clinics, and then pivoting all the resources that have currently been used in the city and probably in much of the greater Toronto area to more mobile clinics. The whole idea that, okay, we've gotten everybody who will come to us, so let's go to those who can't. And that's the strategy from this point. So everything is more Like 4 clinics will remain open, and coincidentally, the one I was at is one of them, but it has now been reduced to in terms of hours and space and capacity. And then all the other resources, there were 9 mass clinics altogether. And let me correct that. 5 are still open, not 4. 5 of them remain open, but their hours have been reduced and their resources and the manpower have been reduced. But the resources from all the others are now being focused into a more mobile model, as mentioned earlier. So that's a short version. But in the process, yes, they let go I would say, yeah, let's say the majority, more than half at least, of the people who had been employed at those clinics, including myself. Everybody who worked there knew it would end at some point. And maybe perhaps the only real surprise to them or to a handful of us is it ended at this point. Many felt it could go just a little longer, maybe another month. We'd get to fall. But hey, that's just the way it is. And, you know, it was we worked under the belief that people would be 16 weeks between doses when it ended up being more 4 weeks, right?
Yeah,
Things
like
moved
we had
along well
longer
enough.
tails originally, right? And
Mhm.
then once it ramped up, it just moved faster than I think a lot of people anticipated and stuff like that. And we had the doses to make that coverage too.
And once again, it's a for better or worse. Sadly, it's not to say that the pandemic is over. As a matter of fact, we're probably in yet another phase of it, another wave, because numbers have been going up. I believe we got over 700 today in terms of number of cases, or is it just over 6? Do you remember the number, James, off the top?
It, I thought it was around 800 is what I heard, but I could be wrong.
No, you could be right. I mean, for now, I'm believing you. It's just I know that numbers aren't flattering. Of course, read between the lines and whatever numbers there are. Yeah, you're right. It's almost 800 for the day, and that's a new, or we haven't gotten that number in months to be sure. So yeah, there's some concern at the moment. We're seeing a fair number of breakthrough cases and what have you, and well, it's all science. A little bit more than what we are capable of talking about. But hey, the pandemic series continues. Okay.
And I heard you got a shout out on Twitch too because you worked at a clinic.
got a couple shout outs from a couple streamers. Well, only because I brought it up on their stream and they actually paid attention to their chats.
Which is probably incredible considering that's probably a skill in itself because I know those two had a lot of viewers, correct?
Well, okay. Well, truth be told, yeah, it's well, since we've been watching Trash Taste on and off, both of us,
Mm-hmm.
one of those streamers is Kahu Shibuya,
Yeah, I remember you said about Shibuya. Mm-hmm.
who's the lone who's the lone Japanese guest at any convention going on in North America probably this year. She was at Anime Matsuri, and that I get that. Anyone who wants to keep up with that story, they already know the basics. We won't go through it right now, but mentioned it to her, mentioned it on her stream when I was watching, and she gave a shout out there. Cosplayer extraordinaire, among other things. But yeah, she mentioned it. The other it was Emily Tang, the um, the Chinese language correspondent for the Chengdu Hunters in the Overwatch League. She's one of their correspondents and interviewers since she speaks Mandarin. But she regularly streams from her place in Las Vegas and brought it up a couple times. She's somebody I've wanted to talk with a little bit more just to pick her brain because she, in a past life, actually in both Kahu Shibuya's and Emily Tang's past lives, they were sports reporters. Shibuya, she covered NPB, so she used to be a baseball reporter in Japan. And then Emily Tang used to cover the NBA. And truth be told, she's a big Clippers fan, she mentions on her stream. So she's happy they have Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah, they got the claw.
Mhm. And she mentions a lot, talks a lot about on her stream about the COVID situation there, and I bring up the clinic, and I got a shout out there a couple times when I mentioned working at the clinic. So I get it; it's not a huge thing, but it's on a personal level, it makes you feel like you've done some good, right? And remember, I'm not the one putting the needles in people.
As they say, every little small part counts, and
No,
I
yeah,
think you always remember that one story they always talk about how the janitor is just as important at NASA and stuff, because like if one little thing gets into that rocket, kaboom,
right.
so to speak.
It's I just refer to the roles that the people who worked in those clinics had, where they were simple roles but not unimportant. That's the way I put it, right? Yeah, and I was what was referred to as non-clinical staff. So everything that surrounded the clinics that didn't have to do with any medical stuff, I did. Whether it's cleaning or crowd control or or simple logistics. That's what I was helping out with. As I said, it was a fun while it lasted, and met some good people. Yeah, I mean, I get it. It was a paid job, but it was still you came. Many of us came away thinking we did some good. So anyway, pandemic series does continue as mentioned. Okay, now that we're 12 minutes in, James, back to what I said 12 minutes ago. So one of two things I want to start with. Which one do you want to start with? Do you want to start with a number or an Olympic thought?
I guess there isn't much I can say on Olympic thoughts. I guess we could always talk about. I
Well, we're
know
going
you
to talk
guys were
about both.
throwing out names about what the new streaming kingpin of specialized anime would be. Which I
We
guess
will
if
get to
I'm going
that.
to throw one into the ring, that will never happen. But hey, let's go for it to get some more regular people watching. We could call it. Adult Japanese cartoons presented by PlayStation Plus. How about that?
Oh, for God's sakes! Well, yeah. What's the branding? We'll go with. Let's go with that a bit. Let's talk about that a bit later. So let's go back to the first two I proposed to you.
Okay.
Which one? Olympic thought or number?
How about number? Let's go numbers.
Okay, the number I have is 49.
Well, I guess that's better than some of the other numbers I could have heard.
Okay. No, you're right. Obviously it's 49. It could be much worse. I get it. The number I have is 49. You know what 49 in this case refers to? And it refers to specifically this podcast. And it has a bunch of dual meanings. But 49. Take a guess. Take at least a guess when I say 49.
That this is the 49th recording of the pandemic series, correct?
I think I told you that earlier, didn't I?
Yes, we had discussed that many a time and stuff like that. So we're chugging along at a bigger clip than I think we ever thought, right? And we've talked about that many times over the course of the year.
Yeah, so that's right. 49 represents, well, we did episode 49 a couple weeks ago, the regular episodes, but yes, it's the 49th recording done of the pandemic series. So that's when we're talking regular episodes, what we used to do with the digests, On My Mind, special episodes, Space Heater chats. Add them all up since April, since the On My Mind when I told the story of my high school senpai. 49 recordings. So that's why, and that includes this one. This is now the 49th recording of the pandemic era. And I wanted to do specifically something that's not a regular episode, because obviously The next regular episode will be episode 50, so that also means the 50th recording of the Pandemic series becomes the 50th regular episode of the version 2 era. Yeah, it's just hard to believe we've done that much. So if my math is correct, we've done 32 regular episodes on top of that as part of those likely 50 some odd recordings in the Pandemic series. Did you think we'd be doing this much? Do you think the Pandemic series would have lasted this long, James?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I just roll with the punches and stuff like that, and then we see where it takes us, right? And as we said, some topics like the ones we may discuss again tonight are ones that are just a continuous thing that continues on and on and on.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'd mentioned we do the numbers. So yeah, next regular episode we do the 50th recording of the Pandemic era Pandemic series will be the 50th episode of the version 2 era. And that's why I want to make sure all hands are on deck for that. All 5 of us regulars now are able to do that episode. So, okay, the Olympic thought. And this is a very simple one. Just a first blush, yes or no. With the Paralympics currently going on, and I know some games have already happened, I'm actually watching it. Did you watch the opening ceremony of the Paralympics?
No, I did not watch it.
Okay. It was much more, let's just say it had that, it felt more story driven. It had that theme where they tell a story throughout the opening ceremonies. This time it was about a figure with only one wing and how they go through life, just something like that, right? It was much more elaborate in contrast to what we saw in terms of the opening ceremonies, in my eyes, during the Olympics about a month ago. So here's my yes or no. And I guess maybe you're not in the greatest position to give me a real thought, but I'll ask it anyway. There is this impression that the Paralympics opening ceremony felt better planned out and more elaborate and what have you. So the yes or no basically is, do you think it's because there weren't nearly as many scandals behind the production of that opening ceremony compared to the Olympics opening ceremony?
I think you don't even need to have watched. You would definitely say yes. Like, they even admitted that caused problems and that they basically were doing that opening ceremonies for the main Olympics like in a matter of 4 months or like in a very short timeline. So I'm amazed they got anything together on some level.
Yeah, because it felt like it had to change on the fly, and it felt more pieced together last minute at points. Like it was just a dance. There was just a little dance number, but it never really felt like there was a narrative being told.
And even with the scandals and stuff like that, probably some of the ideas and some of the songs and things like that might have been in the ceremonies because they probably had so much rush against time, right? That you can't just erase a whole thing and then start from scratch at that point.
Yeah. So you would say you would agree with at least the whole idea that could have been the case.
Yeah. The other thing is, remember the Paralympics, they always say it's like they're kind of on the same level, but I feel like it's a little more low profile in the general public's eyes. So probably they went to someone and then we just haven't heard. Well, we probably know who did it, right? But most people wouldn't be able to know who did it.
There's a joke about that, about the guy who did it, because I think the producers just made it a point. Once they got the job, they just stayed as low profile as possible so that any possible controversies from their past wouldn't come up. They just stayed as much in the shadows as they could. They probably didn't have any skeletons in the closet anyway, but at least not nearly to the degree that it happened within within the regular Olympics, but
No
that's just
Jeopardy type
oh
skeletons in the
yes.
closet.
Just quickly, who do you think's the new host of Jeopardy? I get
I
the feeling.
say what they're going to do, since we talked Hatsune Miku, I think the only way they get out of this is, since everyone has a skeleton in the closet, they have to get a hologram of Alex Trebek and have him continually host somehow. It's the only way.
Wow, I haven't heard that idea. I mean, Val Kilmer kind of has gone that route. Roger Ebert did in his final years. That's interesting. That is such an interesting thought. I mean, I'm pausing here because I just think, hmm, I'm not going to dismiss it. Probably not. It's not likely, but that.
It's
And I
not
know
going
you're
to
saying that as a
happen, but
joke.
it's the most craziest idea, but
It's
somehow it's
I.
crazy enough to work.
It's
Like the
crazy
crazy
enough
as a
that
fox.
it's crazy enough that I wouldn't outright dismiss it. At least it's worth a debate to wonder its merits, right? That's interesting. I like that. I like that. Okay, jokes aside, what do you think is the more likely scenario?
I don't know. I'm wondering, like, we've heard that, Blossom herself
Maybe
might
Alec.
be stepping in, so maybe she
Shows
might take over full time. But I think Ken Jennings is probably up there, and even LeVar Burton. We'll see about that, because I know that was a fan favorite.
yeah, and I think they want to for PR reasons. I think well, Ken Jennings wouldn't be bad PR either, so at least you would think. But he has a skeleton that kind of came out during his time hosting. Maybe Alec, I know there's a skeleton there.
Hmm.
Mike Richards has well, that took him down. LeVar Burton, not so many, but I know people were kind of frosty to the way he handled it. But okay.
I think some of the other thing with Richards you have to remember is that he was also exclusive producer and stuff like that. He's still keeping that role, it sounds like. And the thing was, he probably had an ability that the others didn't, was he could show the focus groups certain footage, right? So he could technically make himself look better. So that was, I think, an even bigger sin too to think about.
Well, it's just
There's so many sins there, but yeah.
yeah. How does he like? He's the executive producer. Yeah, I know that we can go on and on about that. Well, as it stands, I know Mayim Bialik will step in as host for a little bit, maybe a couple weeks, and then they'll start rotating guest hosts again. I think. So we'll see. I'm curious. Let's see. Let's see how the other producers and Sony or whoever else really handles this. Because boy, this has been a nice little like. Who's had the worst PR time of it? Jeopardy or the Olympics? Now there's the thought. Okay. Well, I guess the other reason, we're welcoming you back. Well, welcome back again. We
Not to
have
talk
done.
about Sony's game
Yeah,
shows, but Sony's other
let's
side.
talk about good segue. Good segue. Well, you were always good with the segues, James. So yeah, we're talking from one Sony thing to another. I wouldn't say controversies. I hardly look at Crunchyroll as a controversy, but it is a point of discussion. Okay. So another couple weeks have passed since the announcement. What's your take? What's your take now?
I think my take is still the same as what it was. I think we knew the deal was probably going to get done, no problem. They probably did take a look at it, but as you guys said in the episode, I think that Greg mentioned it as well, and you were talking about too, is that, remember, they did have the partnership before, and that was probably something they brought up probably at whatever hearings or whatever
With the Justice
deposition
Department.
of materials they gave to the committee, and said, well, this is what happened during that time. And it's not like somehow like they became like this monopoly that controlled everything. And so, and prices, like, there were still two separate things. So Funimation did dubs, Crunchyroll did subs. Now, obviously, given what we heard from Sony, it sounds like they're probably going to merge them together somehow. Now, I don't think it's, you guys were talking more general terms, but I think it's going to depend on the market. I think probably maybe depending on the market, they'll use Funimation. So maybe North America, they might use Funimation, but probably for certain markets that were outside North America that were non-English markets. So we're talking about Latin America and stuff like that for Spanish, and even like in Brazil with Portuguese, Brazilian, and then even in European markets and stuff like that. They might use Crunchyroll because that's the more known commodity for
So
those
you
languages.
so let me get this straight. You're thinking there'll be a fracturing of the brand, like a fracturing of the brand going forward. Sony will just they won't stick with one name. They will go just whatever suits them.
I think that would probably be for the best in some ways. And then the other thing you got to remember is Funimation was playing catch up in a lot of those other language regions. Like they got a lot of flack, I know, in Latin America for some of their Spanish dubs and stuff like that. And I know one of them they did out of Miami before they started using some of the studios I believe Crunchyroll used, which some of them were from Mexico. I think near Mexico City, and there's a few others in South America that has done good work that people were happy with from those languages. But Crunchyroll is far ahead of Funimation when it comes to non-English dubbing. So that would be a strength you don't want to get rid of. Whereas on the English side, they Crunchyroll, of course, has went to Bang Zoom. I think that still may continue to happen because there's just too much anime coming out that Funimation can't handle all of it from their own studio, and we've seen that during the pandemic, where it isn't just them doing dubs and doing it remotely from Funimation. They're doing it to Sound Cadence, they're doing it to New Generation Pictures, they're doing it to Kocha Studio, they're doing it to Otakon 5000 or 3000, whatever. Oh, I forget his name. Funimation, old hand, but his studio.
Lance Heskell?
No,
Not
not
Lance.
Lance High School. It's I should remember it. It's a voice actor, and it's terrible
Okay.
that I forget his name.
Well, but even a thought on the branding then, because Funimation has almost become a four-letter word to a huge chunk of fandom. So, like, you think it's safe still for them to use that branding within the English-speaking world? It's just it's gained such a almost bad reputation amongst fandom. Like they become the monolith within anime fandom.
I feel like Crunchyroll, you don't have, like, there's still people that have their hate there too, especially for both Funimation and Crunchyroll in regards to streaming, because their platforms can be very finicky. And even I've been having issues watching certain episodes on, like, my platform. I was watching through Xbox One, I've watched through my PlayStation 4, and it's like,
If
especially
you
on
said
Crunchyroll,
5, we're giving your address. Sorry.
it's the base PS4, Mike. It's not got that much power. But anyway, Crunchyroll. It feels like I'm going into that episode, and then I just see this spinning ring. It takes forever to load something, but once it does it, it finally gets to where it needs to go, and it takes a while to get, like, a second before it flickers to the 1080p. Now, Funimation, I haven't had too much of that problem, but I do know a second before it gets to the full 1080p. But you don't notice that on the, like, Amazon Primes or the Netflixes of the world. And if they say they're trying to compete against the big boys, they should put some money into their infrastructure and actually make their platform like they mean to actually play like a big boy. You know what I mean? But I doubt that's
I
going to
get it.
happen, as Kevin said. I don't think they're going to put money in. I
You
think they're just going to say it's good enough, and we got it, your money.
It's bufferific. I will tell you that. I mean, my own recent Crunchyroll experiences, because I can't speak to the Funimation part yet. Although, well, maybe I'll consider a subscription at some point. Maybe when income is just a little better. But I remember, yeah, you're right. I remember later episodes of Tsukigakure. Don't at me on the pronunciation, by the way. But I remember, like, if I wanted to scrub and scroll ahead to a point in the episode, it just, it buffers, and it buffers for like a good, God knows how long. It feels like 30 seconds, I guess. It does feel like a bit. So I get it. There's some issues. But you're not optimistic. You're not optimistic they'll do some checking into that.
Like they as you've seen, like they've relaunched Funimation streaming service, and they've relaunched Crunchyroll's into the quote unquote new era, and the new era still feels like the old era when we're trying to get things streaming. And I know it's not on our end because my internet, when I check on all these other things, it's fine. I got all my bars. I'm
No, I
doing
get that.
wireless. So.
I know where you're going with that because I don't feel those issues nearly as much when I watch a Netflix show. So don't worry about it. So I'm actually in agreement with you about what I'm seeing.
Well, no, it's the thing where you think in your brain, it's like, maybe it is, and then you go and you look, and you're like, no, this is on their end.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I know. I mean, right now, maybe I am having, like that aside, I mean, I am having the odd slow day on my internet right now, but we're in the dog days of summer. So I think there's still just a lot of people on the internet. But I know where you're going with it. Because as I said, I'm seeing that as a Crunchyroll watcher. But yeah.
And then, as we said, hopefully, maybe best practices crossover and stuff like that. Like, for example, on Crunchyroll, when they're streaming a lot of their episodes and stuff like that, I feel like, and even the dubs and stuff like that, it's the TV broadcast version. They don't update it once those home video ones come out, it feels like. Whereas Funimation, once they get closer to releasing a Blu-ray and stuff like that, they change over those videos that were the broadcast version to the uncensored home video version for their dub and for their sub and stuff
Yeah,
like
we have
that.
to clarify. Yeah, and we should clarify that. Yeah, there tends to be a difference between the broadcast and the home video releases. Well, we're in an era now where the concept of a home video is not necessarily passé, but it's not something you see too much, or we talk about too much because of the whole idea, just the general concept of home video
I
and
would
DVD and
say
Blu-ray.
outside Japan, that's true. And because they're still like
Okay, you're right.
very Japan centric and stuff like that on certain things still for the anime industry and a few other industries in Japan, it feels like they're still looking at that core customer. So it's kind of like bringing them in and then saying, okay, now put down your dollars for this like better version. You know what I mean? And
Okay,
sometimes
yeah,
looking
no,
to lead them
that's
on.
actually a fair point, which is lost on me still. Even though we talk a lot at length about the industry in Japan having to face outside of its borders kicking and screaming. As much as I keep saying that, there's little nuances that I completely forget about. And you just reminded me, so thanks. Sincerely. So where'd
Yeah.
you from here?
Well, there's a lot of things like you can think about too. Like we were talking there about those, but the other one as well for the Crunchyroll side is remember they've had to team up once they lost Funimation for distributing their home video rights, and so they've teamed up now. Sentai's starting to release their second batch. We know Viz has Inspector coming out next month, and they'll start releasing some with that deal. And they've had some deals to get some stuff out through discotheque. So it'll be interesting. Those will probably still continue on, but it'll be interesting to see how many get thrown out through Funimation. They were able to do it, but will they go and maybe look at some of those other titles that hadn't been done and people were scratching their head wondering, will they do it? I remember one on my head and a few people's head was Laid Back Camp. And so that has 2 seasons and that has stayed streaming only, sub only. And there's been other ones like that on Crunchyroll, which maybe could have been done sub only through Discotheque or someone else. But it'll be interesting to see if that's possible, if they haven't already made those deals.
So what becomes of the actual home video stuff again when we get to that? If
And
the
I
title
think
should
that
ever get to that.
also shows the thing that for Crunchyroll, it's going to look like in the future for maybe other players as well that some of them are probably going to stay streaming only because they have the numbers, and it's going to be, do we really want to put this out on Blu-ray and stuff like that and put out that physical release? Or is there going to be something where we're going to have to show them that they want us to put that out and stuff like that? And we saw that in Japan with Odd Taxi and them doing that crowdfunding campaign where they reached the goal to actually release that on Blu-ray in Japan. And that was a hidden gem of the spring season, which is kind of a funny thing to say in the streaming era since we kind of get everything, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, I don't know. Really comes about. Okay, I'm still wrapping my head as to where where how to proceed in this brave new Sony dominating everything world. Is it? But something tells me it's not always all it's cracked up to be.
I think it'll be a long ride before we see anything in regards to how they want to merge them together and stuff like that because it took a long time before they brought like Madman and manga and Funimation, all their other stuff together in the Funimation group, and then of course Aniplex in Japan and Aniplex USA factor into that as well in that group. And I think even in Japan, they're probably still going to use that Aniplex brand, obviously, since that's the greater thing to use. Even
Yeah, I
actually in
mean,
some parts of Asia, remember Aniplex with their channels and stuff like that, specialty channels would be probably more well known than say Funimation or Crunchyroll.
coming back down to the use of the which name do they want to use going forward? Well, then maybe it's a regional approach, right?
And
Okay, well,
and
yeah,
some of it, I'll say just to end on that one is they probably might want to use the fact that it can tie into their video game business and then work it with PlayStation Plus and stuff like that or PlayStation Now. And we've
okay,
seen a
yeah.
lot of people want to do that.
Well, once again, good with the segues, James, because I was about to bring up. Okay, we a year ago we ended up talking about Sony's business plan going forward and how it'll be very PlayStation centered. Like because you're the one who gave me the Nikkei Asia article, and we talked at length about that and how there's like a bunch of different pillars and it'll center on the PlayStation, but that pillar, like the newest pillar, is the anime side into figuring into all of that. And I haven't seen it yet, at least when it comes to anime and the PlayStation. Or maybe there's something I'm missing. So you're more keen on that. Is there something I'm missing at the moment, or we really haven't started to see how the two kind of roll together?
I think it takes a while for all the tea leaves to fall, so to speak. So I think they now know that Crunchyroll is part of them. VRV is a part of them since I was a part of Crunchyroll. And I guess they're going to take that in and then figure out, okay, how are we going to put this spaghetti soup together? And it took them a while before, and it's probably going to take them a while again to get and see, well, which parts are we going to keep, which parts aren't we going to keep. And unfortunately, there may be some parts, like some people will lose jobs and stuff like that. And it'll depend, I guess, on what they feel is best for the business and
It's a
how it's going
reality.
to integrate with, I guess, their brand as a whole.
It's the reality of consolidation, right? I mean,
But
there could be more opportunities, and people are still hoping that. And as much as I like to say hope isn't a good plan, there's something they see as being part of the industry.
Mhm. But as
So they,
Kevin said, they were the ones that bought Crunchyroll, Funimation, Sony, and stuff like that. So they would probably have the higher edge than them. But we've seen weirder things because think about back when Cineplex and Famous Players when that merger happened, stuff like that. And Famous Players, I felt, was the bigger player, but they're the ones that got gobbled up and they all became Cineplexes.
Mm-hmm. And how is that now? How's that doing? Like Cineplex took over just about everything here in terms of movie theaters. They bought up the AMC operations as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
A few years back. So really, it's just come down to Cineplex, and then maybe you'll hear about Landmark. Maybe you'll hear about. Wait, is Empire still around? That because that's Sobeys ran that.
I think they're still around, but they're a smaller player and only in
Clearly,
certain markets.
probably East Coast because that's where they're based, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
because they're associated with Sobeys.
But there's a lot to think about too in regards to how does this affect uh, production committees and then of course originals and stuff like that. Because I know you guys talked about Crunchyroll originals. I know Jeff mentioned High Guardian Spice, that anime inspired series that they said, oh, it's going to come one day and it's from their Crunchyroll Studios Burbank. But I feel like that is a white whale that is just going to be killed in this merger. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, I think it's going to be back to now. I wouldn't really call them Crunchyroll originals, even though some of them they did brand it that way. But I think they're going to do just like they were doing with some of their own shows for Funimation, where they were on Fruit Basket and Crunchyroll. They were on certain committees, like they were on the Inspector Committee, and that one they called a Crunchyroll original, even though it wasn't really an original. They were just on the committee. So I think they're going to jockey to get on certain committees now, and they might be able to get on like some more high profile shows and stuff like that, which I guess could be helpful, but time will tell.
Well, it's sort of like saying or branding the last two live action Rurouni Kenshin movies as Netflix movies. Not really Netflix, but they aren't Netflix originals, right?
Hmm.
I
But
mean,
it'll
for
be
reference,
interesting to see, like, as we know, like, not many people are on TV, so I don't think it's that big of a worry for them. But it was kind of interesting to see before when they were with Warner and that, and tied almost with Adult Swim and Cartoon Network for a bit, that Crunchyroll, and it's just showing up on Crunchyroll now, Fina Pirate Princess. That
Pirate
would have been
Princess is the name.
interesting to see going forward, shows like that and having those partnerships where they were the driving force with production IG and stuff like that. And they got it out before Japan. So Japan's going to have Fina Pirate Princess in the fall season, October. But it started a couple of weeks ago here and basically premiered on Adult Swim for the English. And unfortunately, it's only US only, which is an unfortunate thing that many other English fans are lamenting. So they can't watch that English version of the dub, but they can watch the English sub, which premiered at the same time on Crunchyroll worldwide. And that was interesting to say the least, that it's both premiering at the same time on different vehicles. But it was an interesting show and a very Adult Swim type show. You can see they were involved, very action focused and stuff like that. And they had worked with IG before, don't forget, on FLCL, that sequel. I think it was FLCL Alternative.
Okay. Well, that's it's an evolving story. We keep saying that. That's that we and we'll say that en masse. We just like keeping up with this.
Hmm. And that one is kind of the thing of where we talk about two worlds meeting, right? How we were saying, and even with Netflix, where they were saying we can bring together people from Japan, people from the US, people from Europe, and all these other places to create something that hasn't been seen before in animated form and stuff like that. And that was kind of there in Fina Pirate Princess.
Well, keep in mind that's probably part of a bigger debate about this that fandom, that schism in fandom that we cited earlier this year. The people who will be open-minded to the idea of further overseas influence in and Japanese animated productions, and then the other party, the other group that doesn't want those type of influences, wants it, oh, dare I say, pure? But really, what's pure? Is my response when I hear that idea? You know what I mean?
And we've
But
seen
once
certain
again, that
series, right, where if it's an original or something like that, sometimes, and we saw that even with Great Pretender, where they put thought to the audience outside Japan, stuff like that, and I don't think that's a bad thing, really. And then there are other series, obviously, if they're based on properties that aren't original and stuff like that, based off a manga, based off a game, based off a light novel, based off a visual novel, then obviously those are probably going to be a more Japan eccentric story and stuff like that.
well, remember, I constantly, and I'm going to add a wrinkle to this and food for thought, and I remember seeing in a tweet a few days ago, so I'll just have to look for the interview. But if it's there, it's there. Remember over the years, I talked about Ken Akamatsu and his reaction to the international audience? And then he said, like, when he reacting to the popularity of Love Hina almost 20 years ago, he said he'd be more mindful of his international audience in the future. So I got a contrasting view for you.
Okay.
Hideki Anno, recently in an interview, or at least he said that's not really on his mind when he when he creates. He thinks of just a Japanese audience, and then he's happy with what happens afterwards. But do you think this is just Hideki Anno? Because Hideki Anno is something else altogether, right?
I would say that, and remember, different creatives think differently from project to project too, right? So
Okay. But I could expect this, like that. As I said, that's a new wrinkle to that debate. And we're thinking about it at some point.
it's funny you brought
Well,
up Ava there quickly, and it made me think of G Kids. And
okay, let's acknowledge Ava for a couple minutes before we go to the other thing that you missed out on. What do you want to say? Which part of Eva do you want to talk about? The G
I was
Kid.
just going to say that them putting up that special edition, the Ultimate Edition, and just on the G Kids site, and it was 5,000 of them at an early bird price of $279.99 American dollars, and that's selling out in about 8 hours.
Then
So,
I heard they put up another 1,000.
did they? Wow, because it
I thought
still
I heard
says
they put
sold
up
out.
another 1,000, and then I'm pretty sure those are gone now too.
Well, they must be gone because it said they don't have any more. But it was interesting for that one where they're having the Netflix dub and the Netflix subs and stuff like that, but also they're having the ADV dub and the ADV subs on separate discs, and they will be on full Blu-rays, and that'll be interesting to see. Is that only on that Ultimate Edition, or will they be on some other editions as well? That'll be interesting
Like
to
a
see.
general edition. I'm wondering if there will ever be a general edition.
Oh, there will be. They have another countdown. So there's going to be a regular edition, and I think there's probably going to be another edition, like a special edition type thing, in between the Ultimate and that one, because it's just too much of a money hound that and they probably paid a pretty penny for it, but it looks like there's still the fan base there. So,
Yes or no? Are the people who said they are not going to buy it because Fly Me to the Moon was a deal breaker, do you think they should be kicking themselves?
well, I guess it all depends on if they were just going to leave it in the plastic wrap. Like if you actually want to watch it, then you shouldn't really care either way. But yeah, Fly Me to the Moon, unfortunately, they weren't able to get that because licensing is so different now, and it's like been
No,
20 years later, right?
yeah,
Crazy.
yeah, I understand that for like G Kids and Netflix not getting it. I have no issue with why they couldn't get it, because that happens. But for the consumers who said, okay, the fact it's not there is a deal breaker to me, otherwise I would have bought it, do you think they should be kicking themselves? Or really it just...
It's up to them, you know what I mean? It's like their own preference, right? What they want to
Mhm.
buy. So some of them, they might not want to buy that edition, but maybe later on down the line, they might be buying a regular edition on sale when it goes to a price that they feel good enough at, right? If they really love the series.
So yeah, I guess the mileage varies. Although I guess the ATV versions with the song on it, their prices have now stabilized. They're probably not dropping anymore. Some people might actually be looking for them.
I think for myself, I'm just going to stick with the platinum tin that I have, and
Well, you
I'll
have the
just
tin,
stick with
yeah.
it.
I have it. I have the tin as well.
My brother has the original one with the
Oh,
booklets and everything, but
I have
I'm
the
happy
original,
with what I have
and
for
I'm
those
with.
ones.
I also have the original regular version ADV did with those really bad cases where the thing where the disc seems stapled into the case, and you can't. And you, it's tough to get out without risking thinking you might crack the disc in some form.
And then for the movies, we have the manga editions, which, like, if you were going to upgrade, I think a lot of people are upgrading for the movies and stuff like that because that'll be a definite upgrade over the manga editions and stuff like that. It's kind of like how when
That's
we
in the
got,
box. Just to clarify, that's in the box, right?
yeah, that's in the box too. The two original movies, not the
Mhm.
new rebuild ones, just to remember.
Okay, well, say something about that quickly, and then because I want to at least say something about the rebuild too.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that, yeah, they would go for it because of the movies, and I was thinking similarly to Read or Die, the OVA, where it was great to get that in the Aniplex Blu-ray of Read or Die,
Oh,
because
so yeah, about
that was it was great
years
to
ago,
watch
yeah.
that on that one in the best possible way. The ROD was fine either way. It was just the other. So it's
That's good then.
anyway. So what
Oh,
were you going to say about the rebuilds, Mike?
money well spent for Amazon.
I'd say so. It'll
I
be
mean,
interesting to see what happens for physical, though.
oh yeah. Well, Funimation still is many respects there.
But it
Like,
could
I
go.
mean, did it really drive? Like, what is the subscription numbers now for Amazon Prime? Did that really drive things a little bit?
I don't know. Like, who knows? Like, I know
It's I know it's
King
so well
Records
received.
did the original series, so I'm not sure for the movies if Kara and King Records are together or if it's just Kara. So it's hard to say what drove them to give it to Amazon. But Amazon got it. They did it. The other thing I know it could have been about because remember Funimation, they one of the stipulations was they had to get into theaters and stuff like that. And that obviously isn't the case because Amazon, like they do put some of their stuff into maybe some theater environments, but it doesn't sound like at the moment that's something that's going to happen with the final Ava movie.
Well, there's a degree of viability right now, and we know, and well, we've had that discussion before about movie theaters.
And we know if it is going to go home video, usually it's a long wait before it finally goes to someone else, whether it's Sentai or whether it's Funimation and stuff like that. Or
Yeah, but I guess Amazon, as I said, it was well received. So I don't really have a good sense of the numbers really about how that if it's really had a tangible benefit for Amazon aside from the praise.
hmm I think
Okay,
it's gotten good buzz for them, and that's what you really want, right? Good buzz
sure,
for your platform.
sure. Positive buzz and Amazon don't usually go together, but it might here. Positive buzz and for Sony when it comes to anime, they wish. Well, okay. Well, you sort of know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so we go from Eva and started with the Crunchyroll stuff. The last thing we talked about in your absence, James. Do you have anything to add concerning the Space Heater chat we did some weeks ago about the Comic Con manga industry panel? I know at best it's blurry, but is there something that you would want to say? Or, well, we're 55 minutes in, so.
Probably not too much I could say on that. I did listen to the episode and enjoyed the listen, but it was a couple of weeks ago, so my memory of that is foggy. And I know I was looking at some other ones, like even the Crunchyroll Funimation one. I was looking at that another article from Anime News Network on licensing costs, which was an interesting one if we ever get to discuss that one.
Well, it's sort of the reason why, like when we talk licensing costs, the only thing that comes to mind right now, just when you say that, is AnimeTube. And it just sounds like it would be a reminder of how unrealistic AnimeTube was with all their promises.
hmm But it's interesting also, like, obviously we got a look inside when ADV collapsed and the legal action was taken about how much they paid for some of the series they had back then. And then they didn't give specifics, but it definitely gives you an idea of what's happening now in that Anime News Network article about costs, how that AAA title is going to be a very big ask per episode. Like you're looking at about as high as 400,000 US per episode. And those are the really top tier titles. But usually, most of them are probably 250 per episode in probably the A and B, high B plus range. But then when you finally get to those lower end ones that are the really C's they talked about, those simulcast ones could go low five figures. And even there are some in the B's they said that could go between 70,000 to 150,000 US per
And we're
episode.
talking per episode.
Yeah, and all those are per episode. And so, trust me, there's a lot of money going to those production committees, considering that to cover a series is only so much for the Japanese because they're doing it only so much for the animation. It's limited compared to what everyone does outside of Japan.
You have the link again? Is it in our Discord?
Yes, it is in the Discord, and
I will look again.
there were other things too on that one where they talked about some licenses, and I feel like some of them maybe they could be Sentai, maybe they could be Discotek, but some series that they'll go to the Japanese licensor and it's probably more for older licenses, and they know it's the right one because sometimes that can be a problem of knowing is this the right person that owns the property, right? But they
Oh yeah,
go to
one of
them,
the
they
well,
know it's the right person, and they say, "Can we license it?" And then they look at it and they say, "It's just not worth our trouble. We're not going to license it at all at any price because it's
yeah,
just
well,
not worth their while." And supposedly that's happened a few times, which can be surprising, but that can be another thing that may happen. And it's hard to say if streaming is going to be a solution or not because people have talked about that, saying that maybe that's an avenue for older titles. But is it? We don't know in certain circumstances.
I'll have to give that a read. But yeah, so nothing on the manga panel itself.
Yeah,
Just
no,
nod and agree.
I would nod and agree. They've always done a great manga panel at San Diego Comic Con, and Deb Aoki always hosts it, and they have the different people from the different publishers and stuff like that. Yen Press, Kodansha, Viz. I think Mangamo was there this year too, and so they have some
It wasn't
really.
Mangamo. It wasn't Mangamo. It was like this year. It was
I
like
know
Yen
that Ed
Press, Viz,
Chavez was
Danpa,
there too, and he's been there a few other times too.
mm-hmm.
And
Square Enix, Kodansha.
yeah,
That's it.
Square Enix is interesting because they only got started, but they haven't really ramped up or anything. They've just kind of been ho hum and maybe one or two like books a month or something like that.
Well, Layla
And
was
would you?
still interesting though. So the way she handled herself in that panel.
Yeah, but
Okay.
it'll be interesting with Square Enix because you think with all that money, right, and all the brand
Well,
power
because
on the
it's
video game side, that
yeah.
they would
I
ramp.
mean,
But I feel like COVID might have made them think about doing it a little slower. You know what I mean? Especially with what we've talked about with printing and that, because they've had issues just trying to get things back into print for a lot of publishers.
well, it's there's for the ground is still not horrible, right? It's like yeah, the COVID there was a COVID uptick, and it'll end at some point. But what does the normal look like? And they're as I said, they seem all optimistic that the normal won't be that bad. Won't be a won't drop like a stone.
Hmm.
There'll be a good normalization that they'll be very happy with. Although, as I said, as mentioned in the back then, and some of it's blurry to me, I'm still waiting for to see if that Netflix moment happens within the manga industry.
Yeah,
And I
no,
joke
there's
and remember, and I sorry.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see what platform it is that comes out on top. But I feel like probably Shueisha and Shugakukan with their online platforms, the Manga Plus or whatever it was, is probably going to be the front runner to go forward because that's the big winner is those shonen series and those jump series,
Mm,
and they've driven Viz pretty far.
yeah. Although, although maybe that's how Anime Tube should repivot themselves. I don't know. But then that's something else altogether. I think I made that joke back then too. Either in episode 49 or in that Space Heater chat. Although we said enough about Tube to say, well, they put themselves enough behind the eight ball. Can they really recover? I'm just saying. I know. I mean, do I sound like I'm ragging on them, or is this of their own doing?
As we said, it's probably more of their own doing, and I would say it's time to move on to another project in another industry before they waste more of their life, right?
Okay, so I'm not
Unless you,
dogpiling. Thank you. Well, no, I'm dogpiling. I don't know. Okay, that's all. That's all.
did you
Much
want to
of it.
talk maybe about some professionals? Because I did watch the Sentai at Home 2 last week on the Friday. It was last Friday
Well,
on the
okay.
20th.
Well, I'll give you the form. I'll give you the form for a little bit, and then maybe we can talk about what we've watched in the last 2 weeks and read.
Yeah, it was actually
Okay,
pretty
give me a thought,
long,
because I
but it was interesting. They were promoting stuff that was coming to and was on High Dive, some stuff that was coming over to Sentai and stuff like that. On they were talking about their dubs, about the Japanese stuff. They got a lot of different people obviously from the Houston side for their dubbing side, but they also got a lot of creators for some of their series in Japan and did a lot of different interviews and videos that I think are still up on their YouTube site. I think even the Sentai at Home 2 is still up there. I'm not sure when, if or when they're going to take it down, but there were some really interesting interviews from a lot of the different Japanese creators, and some of it was talking about future works. Like we saw the future works of Made in the Abyss 2, which I think we already knew was coming. We also saw, like, there were tons of series. The other one was they picked up another Netflix show in Kakegerui, and that's the gambling
yeah,
anime. And that
the
one is the gambling manga that Yen Press has, but they did solicit it for November, and supposedly, like all the other Netflix anime, they're redubbing it. So I guess the cost was too high to get the dub. But I think it wasn't a surprise. Anime Limited had gotten this series, I think, a year or two ago, and they said they were having issues releasing it. And I think it had to do with the dub. So they're probably going to get it out after Sentai gets their release out in November
new
with the new dub.
opportunities, right? New opportunities for the productions for those productions.
Well, it's kind of weird too. Like they promoted Vinland Saga the first season, and I enjoyed what they did, but it's interesting because people are already comparing and dogpiling because there's two English casts. So there's the cast that Sentai did, but then later on we found out there was a separate English cast that somehow Netflix did. But remember, this was an Amazon streaming exclusive. So it looks like Amazon's going to lose that streaming license. It's probably going to go to Netflix, and we know that too because it sounds like Netflix has season 2 of Vinland Saga, which we know is coming in the future.
Hmm.
So that'll
Well,
be interesting to say the least.
Well, you brought up a name that, well, going back to our discussion earlier, about streaming services that we had yet to really bring up. High Dive.
Hmm.
What
And
about
they
High
were
Dive?
on VRV too, so I wonder what's going to happen to them on there, or
Yeah.
whatever.
Well, I don't know what to like. Well, as I said, we can talk about that. But where does High Dive sits? How does High Dive sit these days to you, James?
I don't know. Like sometimes they still have some series that'll cross over onto Crunchyroll. Like I know they had the new season of Non Biori on Crunchyroll, and so I would say that sometimes you'll have things that will get back on there. So it's kind of like, do you really need that high dive subscription and stuff like that? Like the only reason I had it for a bit is they had a deal, I think, when they went from beta to their actual service, and I took that deal. And the other reason I took that deal is because it was cheap enough, and because I wanted to watch Legend of the Galactic Heroes. And that
Okay.
was the only thing I got out of that subscription for the few months, was me watching all of that, and it was a lot cheaper than buying the exclusive box set from the Sentai store.
You know what the correct answer is in my eyes? How does High Dive look? What's the correct answer?
What is the correct answer?
Better than you. Better than Anime Tube. Dogpile. Dogpile.
Well, they did have experience with the
It's
anime
true.
network.
It's true.
The other thing is interesting is they took stuff that was on Anime Strike and stuff like that and kind of integrated that into their high dive experience. And they were ahead of Funimation, funny enough, on getting like some non-English dubs and non-English subtitles and stuff like that onto their service. And that's another thing too, is that Crunchyroll was ahead of Funimation in getting those non-English subs out to other parts of the world that normally were never reached and we never think about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so this tells you the work ahead, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
But I will say one thing about the Sentai at Home too. Like there was some great stuff to watch in there, content from Japan itself and from them themselves. It was funny. They also had old shows that they had rescued. Like they had the director of Nana talking to him about that, and Nana is on High Dive at the moment. And so that's a great one to watch. But hopefully they'll get that Blu-ray out by the end of the year. They said they hopefully will. So fingers crossed on December. But Nana's one that was a favorite back into the
back in the
day.
day,
And
back in the day,
hopefully
it
they
was
can do
one
a
of the
good
things.
job on the Blu-ray because supposedly the French Blu-ray was hot garbage, as some people told us from Europe. So I'm sure they were
Man,
working hard because it seems they have a lot of fans. And on the Sentai podcast, they have been doing some focus on Main the Abyss at first, and now they've been focusing some small episodes on Nana and actually speaking to some of the English voice cast, which was, remember, that dub was done at Ocean in Vancouver,
back in the day, back in the day.
and they're keeping that dub, and they are also keeping the final first. I think it was the first opening, or was it the first ending? I think it might have been the first ending, but one of the songs they had to take out. I remember the Viz release, and they're adding that back in. It looks like they added it back in the High Dive, so it should be there on the home video for the Japanese, they weren't able to sync it for the English, unfortunately, which is too bad.
That's okay. But as I said, there's a lot of, like, you brought up a real name from the past by saying Nana. It just,
Yeah.
yeah, that's just boggles me. I mean, I'm trying to remember when the live action movies came out of that.
I think it was around the same time because remember Viz did the live action movies, they did the manga on Shoujo Beat, which they got up to where the creator stopped, and then they also had the anime on
The
Shoujo
live
Beat
action, yeah.
DVDs and all that, so they went full on that one.
Live action movie 2000, I think 2005 ish was it?
But they released it later. I think it was all 2008 or so when they
Okay.
started releasing those
Remember I
DVDs.
told you. Remember I told you the story about the Nana movie's appearance on Canadian television?
Yeah.
Because I'll give a context then. They back in the I'd say 90s. I don't know how often Omni does it now. They used to show two Asian movies, namely Hong Kong movies, on Saturday nights. They used to do that, right? In the 90s. And they were, if they were Hong Kong movies, they'd have English subtitles, good watching. Some good martial arts movies, some good dramas, some interesting movies from from that point, it was in the 80s probably and early 90s. We were watching movies from that period in, as I said, the mid to late 90s and early aughts. Towards the end or the back end of that type of broadcast, that series of movies they broadcast, they expanded into more Japanese movies. One of those was Nana. They showed the two Nana movies, but they showed them only with Chinese subtitles, no English subtitles.
And that's not too surprising given the
Well, they
multicultural background of the station, how they did certain things. But
because
that was
that
interesting.
was, but that was that. Remember who their market was, who their target was for those when they were showing those anyway, because it was for that Cantonese audience at the time. But yeah, that's my memory of of Nana. That I could share. It has nothing to do with the story itself. It has everything to do about the way it was presented here.
But there is still like some hope. People wonder about Sentai and stuff like that about after they get through the contract with Crunchyroll for this next set of Blu-rays and stuff like that. And yes, they do have like maybe one or two exclusives, the crumbs they pick up from the table, but I think they still have other opportunities like Discotech to look at older catalog titles, and they have done that before and stuff like that, looking at Pat Labor, looking at Nana, looking at other things, because Discotech can't put it all out themselves, you know what I mean? There's still opportunities out there in the older catalogs if they find the right title or hit the right price point.
Yeah. Well, like we said, it's somehow there's always still a heartbeat there.
And maybe some other licensors would like to take a chance on someone else and stuff like that. Maybe not go back to the same well again and again, right? To see what price they're willing to offer. It's kind of the interesting little thing. Like for the Sentai at home too, I think I made mention to you, Mike, and this was the surprise. So you know how with Nintendo and Apple and all these other companies now, there's always after they finish in that and they said one more
Just
thing.
one more thing.
And so they did their just one more thing before it even started in a press release. And that just boggled my mind because I felt it would have been the perfect thing to end on. And it was the press release that Sentai Filmworks had licensed from TMS Lupin the Third Part 6, which is starting in the fall season, and it's to celebrate 50 years of animated Lupin.
So recap: who has the other? Who has the other parts?
Well, remember, so TMS has licensed out a lot of the recent ones to Discotech. They did do Lupin the First to G Kids to get into theaters and stuff like that. But they were saying that TMS has been helpful in actually dubbing some of the Lupin franchise recently and dubbing some of the Detective Conan series. So it wasn't always Discotek doing some of the dubs. Sometimes it was TMS. And some of that was to get on other platforms like for part 4 and part 5 that was dubbed by TMS, and they also did that so they could get it onto Adult Swim. And I
Hmm.
wouldn't be surprised if in this deal, TMS is helping Sentai dub it with some of the actors that have done Lupin before, and maybe even get it onto Adult Swim to help them sell some more units and stuff like that. I don't think it'll be a Texas cast.
Interesting.
And some people were talking about Richard Epker, who is synonymous with Lupin fans and with the series, of course. And I would say, like, I know he had some tweets and stuff like that, but I don't think it had to do with part 6, because they had been reaching out to him and to the other actors in California to get some other specials and stuff like that done. Like, I would say the one that we found out that was being dubbed, and maybe he was talking about that, was the most recent Lupin special, Lupin the Third, Prison of the Past. It sounds like TMS was helping getting that dubbed, and they were also helping out getting dubbed the Conan vs. Lupin movie, which Discotek announced at their Otakon panel. And so we'll see what happens with some of that, because some of that is to further their brand, so to speak.
Hmm. Well, as I said, their beat. It looks like that heartbeat is just a little stronger.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what the price was, but I think some of it too was it helps them maybe get it to market in a few things a bit faster, especially on the home video front, because it's taken Discotek a bit to get certain ones out because they had to slog through a lot of things to get, like, they were
Oh
on a
yeah,
real clip of releasing a lot of Lupin specials, and then this
they have
month
their other
they
stuff.
just released part 3, and part 5 is going to be released in October on home video, but it's been a while since it showed up on Crunchyroll. So it'll be interesting to see with them licensing it. Does that mean TMS is going to allow them, and will Sentai allow it on other streaming platforms like Crunchyroll, or is it going to be exclusive to High Dive?
Now that's the question, isn't it?
Though
Because
what we do know
exclusivity
is
for them
video
doesn't
to
really work.
own will be a different kettle of fish, and yeah, they'll have it on probably the usual suspects, just like TMS always does with those movies and specials, which is interesting enough where we find out about some of the dubs sometimes because they say, oh, this is on Amazon to buy to own and stuff like that digitally for a sub and a dub. And it's like, a dub, what does that even mean? Because we'd never know.
Mhm. Okay, I don't know. There's really not much else to add to this.
But it'll be interesting. I'm guessing like it'll probably be on High Dive because the last one at part 5, I know TMS, they had it on Crunchyroll, but they did extend the license to High Dive and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting if at first maybe they just have it on High Dive and maybe extend an olive branch onto Crunchyroll like they did. So the opposite of what they did for part 5.
Makes sense.
But still a big announcement. But it was interesting that it was announced before this whole big event in a press release that was nonchalant. And I would have thought that would have been like the last thing, the one more thought. And I thought that would have been an interesting thing to send them
A
off.
perfect presentation, right?
Yeah. Not
For
to say
that,
it was
for
a
by the
bad presentation or anything like that. Everything was great. It's just, it would have been, I think that would have been the big hurrah. You know what I mean?
yeah, for sure. Okay, well, okay, we're like an hour 19 minutes, I think, by my calculations or by my clock, according to what this screen is telling me. I guess we're in the back end. Is there anything we should add? Do we want to talk a little bit about what we're watching these days? What's on our queues right now, or should we just save that for another time? Because I get
Uh,
the feeling we can go for a long time by the stuff we talk about.
Sure, if you want, we can see what we're watching. It's like I think the two that come to mind. So I was watching Dear Brother from
That's
Discotheque.
you.
I watched through all of that, and that was a very respectable anime about an all-girls high school, an all-girls sorority where nothing unblemished happened, I believe. It was a very PG, family-friendly affair, I think.
Mm. That's yours?
Yes, I did buy that. It's weirdly enough, I watched it on Anime Souls, but I did not get the DVDs. My brother got the DVDs through Anime Souls. But it's like when they had that Blu-ray announcement, they said it was going to be a short period. I knew it was something I want to have. And even if you have those Anime Souls DVDs, it's a worthy upgrade to have.
Okay.
And then the other one I was watching, gunning through, I was watching on Funimation the first part because I'd already watched it a bit before, but I was going through the dub of the first season, the 12 episodes of Moriarty the Patriot. And because I hadn't watched the second season, I then watched the next 12 episodes of the second season sub only. And that was an interesting anime series. It was actually based off a manga, and Viz is releasing the manga. And that one's a Jump Squared title, and they've done some manga like that, looking at, I guess, historical or literary figures. But it's an interesting take on Moriarty from Sherlock Holmes and looking at it kind of in a different light. I think everything is based off the manga, but the interesting part is how they did the anime exclusive first episode. And I think it was a better introduction than how the manga did it. So it really grabbed you. But I think there were other elements too where they actually had it start out for some reason that this kid was reading Sherlock Holmes, the final problem or whatever, the book in New York City, and he's turning to the page, and then you see the original image of Moriarty, and then you see
Hmm.
what he is in the anime series, and kind of what he's become in media since. And he doesn't have that same image as the original illustration, where he kind of has this more star and this more beautiful appearance than what he had in that original image, where he was kind of hunchback, not looking as great, but his intellect was an even match for Holmes, and even greater, depending on who you ask.
Well, it's sort of the medium, I guess.
But it definitely is a show of the times, as some people would say. It's like, and it's one you could always say is that you don't have to be like waving the flag to be considered a patriot. A patriot can be someone who can also do other things as well and can go against the grain.
Hmm. I'd have to read up more on that. Just only because you brought it up, and I'd be curious. But that's only on Funimation, isn't it? Is it just Funimation?
Yes, that one is just on Funimation, and they'll probably release a physical release at some point because the first season was split into two cores, and so the first season was in fall season last year, and then spring season this year was when they did the final, I think, 13 episodes.
Well, can't wait for that. Whatever the consolidation is, I guess, between Crunchyroll and Funimation, whatever form it takes. Or
But
maybe I'll splurge. We'll see on
But that
a
one, it was
subscription at least.
interesting. I enjoyed this one, Moriarty the Patriot, more than I did that other Sherlock Holmes show they did a year or two ago. Remember that really weird modern take where they were set in Japan and stuff like that? And it was okay, but I don't know why. It just didn't grab me. But this one,
It was an
kind of
animated.
going back, yes, it was an anime.
Okay.
But it was like this one, and even the manga, it's like kind of going back, so to speak. So it is set in the 19th century and stuff like that. And obviously, we can talk about accuracies or whatever, but it's set in that era, and it's kind of taking some of the home stories and presenting them in a new light, so to speak. And I thought they did a good job of that.
Hmm. Well, I mean, that seems to be a thing these days, especially Sherlock Holmes over the last 10 plus years. Okay. So my watches reads before we end. My turn.
Sure.
Okay. First of all, the read I had is not anime or manga related or light novel related. But it is Toronto Blue Jays related. I read Bullpen Gospels by Dirk Hayhurst. His chronicle of I think it was a 2007 season in the minors. Just a shout out for the Toronto stuff, but that's just something I should mention. Okay, anime wise, I did start watching the beginning. I think I'm like 4 episodes in. I mean, you watched it.
Yeah, no, I watched it. I also have
I
the
enjoyed it.
that Ultimate Edition stuff like that. I believe it's the same director too as doing
Hmm.
Athena Pirate Princess. That is did that one as well
Oh,
because it's an IG series and that's where it's
yeah, it is
originally.
an IG. Yeah. No, I mean,
But
I thought it would go one way. Now it's taking its turn and starting to go the other way,
they do take
and I'm
some
enjoying
turns.
it.
It's an interesting series. I haven't watched the second season, which is more OVA like. It's a shorter amount of
I
episodes,
think it's
but
6 episodes. Second
yeah.
series,
But I've
second
heard
season.
different takes on that one, so that'll be interesting if I ever
When you get
see it
around to
or
it.
someone wants to watch it
I
with me or
mean, the
something.
other thing is I've yet to watch the continuation of B Stars. And by the way, some of these references I'm about to make will have an NHK tied to it in some form, and I'll just play with me for a couple minutes on this one, okay?
Go ahead.
But yeah, I've yet to watch B Stars, and I'll eventually get to it. But Be the Beginning, it's grabbed my attention, and when I can get around to watching it, great stuff. I've enjoyed it, and I'm alternating between like sub and dub again. So I think I watched the first episode sub, and then second episode. First episode sub, and then the next 2 episodes dubbed, and then I think I'm on episode 4. I watched that subbed, and then I'll alternate from that point.
Yeah, no,
But it's an enjoyable watch so far.
I was okay with the dub for that one. I know they did that one in California. I guess some people where you could have a criticism of that one is this island and this land they're on is kind of supposed to be similar to England and stuff like that. So you could say maybe you'd want some more English tone or
More
acting
your
in that one. But I
Mhm.
think it didn't hurt it too much with how their voices and where they stand are.
Yeah, it never like it didn't bother me. It didn't stand out negatively or positively. I just took it for what it was so far. Yeah, it has a more like the town they're in, it's set in, has a kind of European feel to it. So I get it. And you hear the accents, but it never really stuck out. And in this case, that's probably a good thing because then it could be bad. So I'm looking forward to watching a little bit more of that in between Paralympic watching. The other episode, and I watched this earlier today. Oh, the NHK tie. Um, Marty Friedman. He performs the closing song, right?
Yes, I
Memory
do
serves me right.
remember that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, where's the NHK tie? It's with Marty Friedman. First of all, Marty Friedman is a former member of Megadeth, but he settled in Japan because he married a Japanese cellist, I believe.
hmm And we know how big certain bands got in Japan, right? They did, Mr. Big did. Like there are tons of '80s ones that somehow
Yeah,
found
he had
another
no
life in Japan.
problems. He had no problems becoming famous there. He's been on many Japanese television shows since he settled in Japan. One of them included, for 1 year, an NHK music show on rock, on J Rock. He hosted a J Rock show on NHK World, and that's the NHK tie there. Okay, the other show has a more obvious NHK tie. Kyo Kyoto, Maiko-san ni no Makanai, Maiko-san chi no Makanai-san.
Yeah, the Mako House one. Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
I was going to mention that one, but I figured you would bring it up. And I've been watching it on Crunchyroll, and I think you've been watching it on NHK World, right? Because it's been a
right.
nice light series. It's a nice breath of fresh air whenever you watch it. Like I think one came out this week on Crunchyroll, and I
Yeah,
have to watch
that's
it.
the thing because I watched that earlier today. The latest episode came out this week because it's a monthly series, right?
Yeah, it's
NHK's
so
been
weird,
airing the
right?
show
Because
monthly.
we're so used to it like coming out week after week, and this one it kind of is coming out every so often. But every time it does come
It's
out,
at
it's
the
a
end of
burst of
every
fresh
month.
air. It's like
It
small
has
episodes in one.
it has no real plot to it, right? It has no real, like, the only plot you can come up with is it centers on Kyo herself, who's a failed Maiko apprentice, but seems at peace with her lot in life now because she's become the live-in cook at
And she loves
the Maiko
to
house,
cook,
and she loves to cook,
and
and
she loves to
everybody at
see
the
her
house,
friends succeed and stuff like that,
yeah,
and live her
loves
dream.
it. And her best friend, meanwhile, her best friend who came with her has become a Maiko and is thriving as a Maiko, and she's okay with that. And all she's doing, it's just a slice of life about how about her daily life. I'm not going to say it's about how she's handling it because, as I said, clearly she's not bitter at all. She's very happy with, like, Kyo seems very happy with what her lot is at this point in her life. And the rest of the Maiko who live in the house, along with her best friend, Sumire,
Mm-hmm.
they're all happy that she's the cook. Clearly, they value her in her role now. So it's a really, yeah, breath of fresh air, kind of happy. No real plot. Really, it doesn't have much of a plot. It's all, you're just in it because for the cultural and food lessons that they give you. Because each little mini story just centers on something they've eaten, and they give you a context as it comes to regional variations because they're from Aomori, but they've settled in Kyoto,
Yeah, they
and
do go over that.
they go over the regional variations of the various foods they have, and then they give you some little cultural nuggets about what it's like to be a Maiko, or the day-to-day life of a Maiko, and how strict their protocols are.
And I feel like it goes in such a way that you wouldn't even realize this is based off a manga that has 17 volumes at the moment. And so that's something to think about. And that one, actually, it's published by Shugakukan in Shukan Shonen Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
But
Now
17 volumes, that's a lot you would have to adapt. But I feel the way, because I've seen a bit of the manga, not all of it, it's episodic and stuff like that, so it can work like that in the anime, and they add their own spins, as you said, those little things between episodes where they're talking with the one senpai and stuff like that about food and things like that.
mm-hmm. The latest episode features their childhood best friend, who coincidentally, like, it's a boy from their hometown who coincidentally is played by the same voice actress who plays Conan, who plays Nabiki in Ranma as well. It's just funny.
But
That fact kind of stuck out.
there's another thing that should stick out too, but I think it was like either the episode before or the one before that, where obviously they got snow, right? And seeing
Mm-hmm.
them trying to compete to shovel snow and how they were shoveling snow, I'm like, there's no way you shovel snow like that. Somehow getting a perfect block and then throwing it like away.
Well, that was depicted in canon too. Come on. So
Uh,
it's, as I said, it's a amazingly cheerful thing. But you wonder, well, what was the point of doing something, of animating a show like this that had no real plot? It's very episodic, so it's, maybe in that sense it's easy,
I think
right?
it's, as they
Because I got
say,
into a
remember,
discussion with with a friend
it's
earlier today.
it's a healing anime. Remember, I forget the exact Japanese term, but it's kind of like they said, a healing anime where it kind of puts you at peace and at rest, and it probably gives you a bit of a nostalgic tone, probably for certain Japanese audiences and stuff like that.
So yeah, okay, therapeutic in some form.
It's kind of
Like,
like even more slice of life than slice of life, so to speak.
okay. Well, I mean, I have my theories, but maybe I want to save that for maybe another train of thought, because something's about to happen there, I think, and I will, and I'll play that thought. Or do you want me to play that thought now? Do we have time to play that thought? What do you think?
We're over an hour and a half, so I guess the train can't stop any further, right?
Oh, the train, like the train we can travel for a while here. Like we've done this before, right?
So what was the last thing then?
Oh, you want me to play my thought as to
Sure, go
what
ahead.
I think, why I think this was animated? Because I got into a debate with a friend earlier today, and we were wondering. My friend was wondering the merits of having this show animated, having this title animated. I mean, you gave your theory, and it's valid. I can be a little bit more specific, but I can speak to this basically as a regular NHK World watcher, and once again putting my hat on as a former program monitor with NHK World. Not to say I influenced anything, but I think I can spot a trend or something. You want me to play that thought?
Go ahead.
Okay. It's just there haven't been too many successful attempts for NHK World's programming in terms of anime, right? But, NHK World's purpose is to promote Japanese culture to outside of Japan itself, right? And what better way to do that than by talking about quintessential Japanese food and geisha? So you kind of roll that into this series. Now, when it comes to animated series, I'm also kind of reminded about the attempts of animated programming and entertainment programming that has appeared on NHK World, and like the history of it over the last 10 years, but more specifically over the last 5-6 years. You've had little specials like, you had a 2-part TV movie called Kurara, which was a depiction of Hokusai's daughter Oi, who, by the way, was played by Aoi Miyazaki, who was in Great Passage, and I think in the live action Nana as well. Played her, and it was a fun movie to watch. And they showed it twice, once in dubbed and once in subtitled. So you think about the entertainment programming. I think they did something, and that obviously promoted Hokusai and Hokusai's other legacy with his daughter. Another drama they did, I think, was they showed select episodes from a TV miniseries that actually aired in Japan that talked about their sports past, which culminated with this 1964 Olympics. That was over the last year. Back in, I believe, 2015, there was a series called Sushi and Beyond, which was an animated take on Michael Booth's memoir of when he and his family spent 100 days in Japan. That was animated. And they showed that dubbed. And yeah, that, once again, promoting the food. And they had little cultural nuggets at the end of each episode with them going around various like food places, whether they were restaurants or markets. The last attempt I can think about was over 2 nights, NHK World also showed Dragon Dentist. And while I enjoyed it personally, I mean, the anime fan in me actually enjoyed and appreciated the fact they tried it. It just felt so out of place for what I felt was, what was NHK World trying to do with that in putting it on? Like, that was the impression I got after, when I think about it further. So now fast forward all those thoughts, roll it all together, and you have Kion Kyoto, another animated program. It's been a while since they featured an animated show on NHK World. First time they did it really in earnest since Sushi and Beyond, 6 years before. And it's all food, again. Once again, to help promote the culture. I mean, that's the purpose of NHK World. So it's a bunch of jumbled thoughts, I get it, but its mere appearance just really grabbed my attention. And I think the debate behind seeing it just heightened more when my friend who's read the manga in Japanese, by the way, just said They don't know why it's animated. Okay, sorry, James. You're about to say something?
No, I think overall, like, it was probably episodic in the manga, but it also was a good series that they could use, as you said, to present Japanese culture that people are thinking of, the food of traditional Kyoto and its settings of the geisha and so on and so forth. I think the other
Yeah.
interesting thing is when you were watching it, were you just watching the NHK World stream? Because I think you said that one, the narrator
There's
is dubbed,
the
but the
narrator's
one
dubbed.
for
It's
Crunchyroll
Hannah
that I'm
Grace.
watching, it's in Japanese.
Yeah, and that's another key point. NHK World, in their presentation of the show, there's a key difference. It's the narrator. They have Hannah Grace, who's a mainstay with NHK World. If you watch enough of their programming, you'll recognize her voice instantly. And on top of that, they put little 3-minute nuggets at the end about Michael themselves. So, although I think that series is done, so they're just cycling through the episodes they've done already. The 3-minute Michael episodes are called. So yeah, there's yeah, little nuggets. So just I don't know. It's just grabs my attention. Why the focus? That's all.
But it sounds like if it, when we've talked about some of the things they've had there on NHK World, it seems like the right fit. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah,
the
that's the
toughest
key
thing is
thing.
trying to find the right fit that fits into your brand that you're trying to bring out. And
Well,
I
if it's
think there is some anime like that. You just have to find the right one, and this one is it, which is promoting cool Japan in the traditional sense, so to speak, in some form.
it's yeah, it's the key word is fit in this case, and specifically a fit for NHK World, not NHK General, not NHK. Because we know the history of NHK in anime. I mean, there's a lot to go with, but if you want, like Kyo is one part of it, yes, and NHK has a production credit with it. So does Cardcaptor Sakura, though. That's probably the one that sticks out with most people. That's an anime that sticks out to most people. That I don't know how many really know that it's tied with NHK as well.
And even Dear Brother that I was just watching that is tied to NHK. Like they've had many big series and then other series that were big before because they wanted to reach a bigger audience. They went to NHK. Like remember Attack on Titan? It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't originally on NHK, but then they wanted to find that bigger audience, and they said, "Okay, we'll let NHK broadcast it as well, take the lead." And they've done it ever since, and they'll do that final season, I guess, whenever it comes out, which I think is next year.
Mm-hmm. Think about it as yeah, it feels like a parallel with what they did with. It feels almost like a parallel with Demon Slayer. Would Demon Slayer be what it is if it didn't end up on Netflix? Okay, that's another debate, I guess. I'd say that's a worthwhile debate though. Would Demon Slayer have reached the level it's at outside of Japan if it wasn't on Netflix? Because I got some coworkers into watching Demon Slayer at the clinic, and this is like, and some of those coworkers were mothers to college kids. Tried to bond with I think one tried to bond with her college aged daughter, but the daughter wasn't interested in watching an anime at that point. Who knew?
but
But I thought,
uh, Yeah,
yeah.
no, I think we've talked about before, and I think that definitely helped the movie, not just because it was the only thing that was playing. I think having it in front of that larger audience definitely does help and stuff like that, especially
Mhm.
with this is the biggest thing in Japan, and that's probably one of the things they're going to gravitate to first. If that's like, okay, I want to see what anime is about, they're going to go there first.
Okay, yeah. Anyway, that's what those are the shows that are currently on the queue. Hey, check them out if you want. I would check out Moriarty, the Patriot. Now that you brought it up, I would at least give it a consideration, especially if I had the Funimation subscription. But yeah,
It's
I
kind of funny because Sherlock Holmes does not show up till I think episode 8 and stuff like that. So they do give Moriarty his due and stuff like that. He is the focus, his group is the focus. But then it's interesting how they navigate, and then Holmes and Moriarty, both of them have their own focus and stuff like that in that relationship. It's interesting, and it's in the traditional sense, and they're looking at the original 19th century as well.
mm, as I said,
And
good
it's
promo.
obviously they're looking at the class system as well. So it's like the nobility versus the lower class and stuff like that in the society they had back then, right?
Right, in the 19th century, and yeah, it can be quite dingy. So okay, well, thanks for doing this. You available next week?
Hopefully, we'll see how it goes, right?
Right. Well, if
We
the
have to
listeners out
gather
there,
the others too, don't we?
oh yeah, well, as I said, all hands on deck if we do this. It would be what episode 50 for the 50th pandemic recording, right? But hey, that's to come up. If you that's to come up. But that also pretty much finishes this. So to anyone listening, if you have any questions or comments or want to be part of the conversation, let us know. You can email us animeroundtable@gmail.com. We are on Twitter and Instagram @animeroundtable. Please follow us on either of those forums and you'll surely hear from us. We will send you a message thanking you for the follow because not many do, so we have time to say thank you. Past episodes, if you want to hear those, animeroundtable.com is our show archive with said past episodes and links. And wherever you're hearing this, because right now it is a listen, wherever you're hearing this, if you could, please give us a quick review. 5 stars if you could, as Kevin would say, or
I
at
think
least be
I'm going
respectful.
to have to go against that, and I say you're old enough, you can give us whatever stars
Yeah, just
you
let us
want.
know. It's good for both the algorithm and maybe our collective egos as well. Just a little bit of confidence to know that you guys are out there. And once
Can't
again,
believe we had to fight the algorithm.
oh, it's a losing battle at our age, James. Typically, we do episodes once every other week, but we will once in a while go on runs where we will go consecutive weeks, like we have been over the summer. Regardless, wherever you're listening to this, hit the subscribe button so you know whenever we put something new in the feeds. So that's all we got for this evening. Join us again, though, and I guess hopefully next week when we finally do episode 50 of version 2. Thanks again for listening.
Yeah, that'll be special the next episode. And as always, it was great, Mike, and thank you to the listeners, as we would always say, just as you did now.